men and women of Reddit who caught their significant others cheating. How did you do that? And what was your reaction? My ex-husband and his family smoked a lot of pot, still do. His sister, kids, and nanny were visiting from out of state for a few weeks. When it was time to fly home, they left their stash at my ex-Mill's house because they didn't want to take it on the plane. My ex asked if I would pick it up because I was nearby. Stupidly I agree. I don't smoke, and I was willing to carry it in my car for him. To my surprise, I found a note from the nanny to my ex saying she was in love with him and she was so happy for the time they had together. Obviously she thought he would get the weed instead of me. While it was incredibly painful at the time, I am definitely living my best life 15 years later. Worst one I know of is an acquaintance of mine came home from work one day and found his missus having sex with his dad. That blew up all over Facebook and became a local drama fest where people tried to organize a shunning of the dad and missus. I remember it well because, well, I know people cheat, but with your partner's father? Come on. That's hard to beat. A guy I know was cheating on his wife and she unexpectedly came home for lunch. They lived on a busy street in a small town. Wife grabbed girlfriend by her long hair and threw her out on the street naked. And that's how the whole town found out. I was in the Navy and was out on deployment for 6 months after just recently getting engaged. It's one of those stupid things that young military guys do. One day I get a letter from my fiance's best friend telling me that she caught my fiance and her BF together. This was years before email and smartphones were common. We write back and forth several times and eventually it comes out how she caught them, how my fiance begged her not to tell me, and that the fiance didn't know that we were corresponding. I eventually get back to the States and planned to play it off as though I didn't know, but too many of my friends intercepted me with the news that it wasn't just the one guy, but several, and let me know that she knew that I was aware. Eventually we met, and the confrontation was minimal and tame. We broke off the engagement without a lot of drama. She kept the ring. The best friend and I ended up hooking up, at first a sort of revenge fic kinda thing, but turned serious. We celebrate our 32nd wedding anniversary this year. Edit, maths. This year will be 31. After 20, it's all a blur. Same thing happened with me. My best friend was friends with my GF and her roommates. Word got to my friend about her bringing some dude home after a party and my friend eventually spilled to me. As she said, I really don't want to tell you this, and I know this will crush you, but I can't keep this from you. After she dropped the bomb I was like, hell no. That would never happen. And then I confronted my GF about it that night, who broke down and confessed everything. I stayed with that girl for another 7 months and God bless my friend for sticking by my side and supporting the whole way. When I finally ended things, my best friend was still there to support me and care for me. Also haven't dated anyone for longer than 6 months since that happened 7 years ago. We were together for 5 years, living together for around 4. I came home from work early. When I got out of my car I saw her peek through the blinds to see who was outside. I walked in the door to her coworker on the couch, obviously uncomfortable and clothes messy, and her locked in the bathroom. I wanted to pummel the shit out of him then and there, but he was a trained MMA fighter, and I Walder left the house that night with more than a broken heart. Went to a friend's house for a while. They started dating the next day. Shut sucks. It took a while for me to get trust back in relationships. Went for my yearly checkup and tested positive for chlamydia. Turns out my ex was sleeping around. We were engaged and it was about 4 months to the wedding. It was her birthday and a Friday. We had both wanted to see Blue Man Group for a while, so I had ordered tickets to for us. Being a Friday, I took off half a day to surprise her. There was an unknown car in the drive, and the garage was open, which was extremely unusual. It also happened to bypass the camera we had facing the front door. I go in through the garage to hear the unmistakable sounds of sex in our bedroom. I had no clue who the guy was, but he was balls deep in her SS. She had the nerve to say that anal doesn't count. I ended our relationship then and there, which her family claimed broke her. The last time I looked her up a couple years ago, she had had 2 kids with 2 different guys and had spent time in prison for meth. It was a small town, so no surprises there. Her family still make me out to be the bad guy in the relationship when I ended it because I didn't forgive her. Worst of all, I never did get to see Blue Man Group in person. It wasn't a big damn breaking moment. It was a lot of little things. Like how she'd cancel plans at the last second. Or the random phone calls from unknown numbers she'd get. This was back before spam calls were an epidemic. Or how her phone was mysteriously off one night when I needed to get a hold of her. I had my suspicions, and then finally it clicked into place when I did some Instagram snooping and found a guy who followed her who posted a selfie wearing a very unique jacket that belonged to her. I confronted her the next day. She denied it. Tears, begging, all of that. I dumped her and walked away. The next day I messaged that guy on Instagram and he confirmed everything. Had no idea I existed. He dumped her too. Last I heard she's an EMT in Utah, Wyoming. Hope she figured out how not to be a garbage person. 4 years ago I was dating a girl who became distant and disinterested in a lot of things we both enjoyed together. Despite attempts to talk about it, she only grew more distant, then became less available to hang out and suddenly was working late a lot. I started getting suspicious about cheating when she was on her phone non-stop. Again I tried to talk about it, but she wouldn't engage. She also just didn't want to break up with me for whatever reason. I was actually going to end it on my own, but one weekend, when she was seemingly unavailable, some mutual friends told me they spotted her with a dude from her work and they were all over each other. Coincidentally, she had also lent me her iPad, and it was synced to her phone, so I saw lots of texts between those two over that weekend. They were talking about running away together, etc. He was married and her supervisor. Mutual friends were also composed of her coworkers and reported them to ours. They were both forced to do training on not sleeping with coworkers. They were both denied promotion. His wife left him and she moved overseas. Sucked at the time. I was devastated, but karma got them good. The husband of one of the women he was cheating on me with called me at work. At first I didn't believe him and hung up. How could the man I spent the past 8 years with, had 2 beautiful babies with, suffered together the loss of one of those children do something so hurtful? Still a part of me had doubt. He had affairs in other relationships, and we had a rocky patch early in the beginning where I suspected an affair, but didn't have proof. I told my boss I felt sick and had to leave early, and I called this guy back and found out that my ex and his wife along with one of their friends were all sleeping together for about a year. He had confronted my ex and told him that he was going to tell me, but my ex convinced him to wait a month since my mother had just died. I took my time coming home and confronted him and told him to pack and leave. Since I've pieced together a lot of what happened and all the lies he told me where, if I was in a different headspace I might have caught onto the affairs earlier. I also found videos hidden on one of our computers and found out he was having booty calls in our apartment while I was at work and he was watching our daughter. At that point it put the headstone on any possibility of reconciliation. I found a used condom on the bathroom floor. I just emailed him a 30-day end of tenancy notice. I own the house. Edit due to pronoun issues TLDR. My ex-husband was sleeping with his best friend's wife while I was 8 months pregnant. It had been going on for a while. I was 8 months pregnant with our second child at the time and he wanted to go visit his brother for the weekend. I asked my doctor if it was safe for me to travel and she said it would be fine. I told my husband I could go, but he said he was really hoping to just have some time with his brother. I understood because a new baby really makes it hard to spend quality time, but I asked if he could take our older son, 3 at the time, so he could see his grandma and cousins. He said they were planning on drinking and whatnot and wasn't sure it would be a good idea. They're country boys so think shooting, drinking and whatnot. I agreed and he left for the weekend. After he left, I get a call from his best friend telling me that he'll be in town for the weekend and he wanted to meet up. Not weird he called me because my husband was terrible at answering his phone. I told him unfortunately my husband was visiting back home. Bad timing. His best friend then said, okay, I'm going to call you back, and hung up very abruptly. Turns out my husband and his wife had been caught by him a few months previously and he gave them a chance to make it right. I don't know why. He didn't tell me, but threatened to if they didn't stop. Well, they didn't stop, and he told me. I think the worst part was that my husband's family knew and never once thought to tell me. These people were my family for 5 years and nothing. It's been almost 10 years now, and I'm so much happier, but it was definitely an eye-opening experience. I owned a house with my fiancé. I woke up in the middle of the night and he wasn't in bed. I went searching. His truck and another vehicle were in the driveway. Then, I went upstairs and found the guest bedroom was locked. After barging my way in, I found him with another woman in bed. That bed happened to be my childhood bed. He forced me out of the room, literally grabbed me by the neck, and pushed me out, and closed the door back. I knew I couldn't do anything at that point, so I called his parents who lived a few blocks away. His dad showed up, and another fight broke out. I ended up leaving and staying at his parents until dawn. I moved out that weekend and let the house foreclose 9 years later. It's finally off my credit report. I'm happily married to an amazing man, and we own a beautiful home together. Ex-wife actually asked me for her blessing to commit adultery with another married man. She was shocked when I said I don't support it. She went ballistic, has severe mental health issues, went and did it anyway, and ended up in a psych ward. 2 marriages ended, and now the two cheaters are engaged. Little devastated at first. Blessing in disguise. June 1st, 2018. Normal day. A Friday. My husband had kissed me goodbye and gone to work. I was cleaning the house for company who was coming to stay the weekend. The doorbell rang. There was a man at my door who introduced himself as the husband of a woman whom my husband worked with. He was there to tell me that my husband and his wife were having an affair. He had busted them about 6 months prior and had told his wife that she had to end the affair. He thinks that she did end it for about 3 months, but then they started up again. When he found out they were at it again, he called my husband because he knew if he confronted him in person, he'd be in a jail cell for what he'd have done. On the phone, he told my husband to leave his wife alone or else he would come and tell me everything that was happening. Apparently, my husband thought that he was bluffing. So I was literally the last to know. My husband never came home again. He got an ad and banned a lawyer. The divorce was December 21st, 2018. We had been together for 24 years. Still hurts. I was married. Out of the blue, while at work I get an email that says, husband's name, _wife. When I open the email it lists off a name and says, husband's name, married to her. Check on Facebook. English was not the first language, this was overseas. So I do, and what do I see? Tons and tons and tons and tons of pictures of a woman with my husband. The woman and her kids with my husband. The woman and her family with my husband. I was stunned to say the least. It was October 6, 2017. 7 months after I almost died from an ectopic pregnancy. Yep, we were trying at that point to have kids. After work I went home and started throwing all of his stuff in the dumpster. He was out of town at the time, so I had plenty of time to do it. Spent all of Saturday and Sunday throwing everything he owned in the dumpster. A month later I moved to a new apartment and waited until then to tell him I was divorcing him. He then killed himself a few months later. Back then Facebook used to display on your profile stuff like don't say or to liked a photo and everything you did. I noticed he liked a photo of a girl that seemed to be someone he had recently added. So I checked her profile and she was one of those girls who think they won because men cheat on their partners with them. She had everything public, photos with him, bragging about the texts they exchanged, etc. So I engineered a way to befriend her roommate. I would then find out she was bringing other dudes home besides my boyfriend. And when I confronted him, I also let him know about who else she was sleeping with and for him to get an STD test. I didn't catch her. She told me I wasn't a real man, and that's why she did it. She just told me everything she hated about me, went on to why I'm worthless, pulled over, kicked me out the car, and I had to walk back to my place. As far as my reaction went, I went home, cried, went to bed, stayed in bed for a few days, thought I was a terrible person for a few weeks, cut my holiday leave short, and went back to work early to get my mind off things. Edit. This was a while ago now, and I'm definitely in a much better place in my life. Dated a girl for about 2 years. Like 18 months into the relationship we are talking about moving in together. Then kinda out of nowhere she starts becoming distant and irritable. We ended up breaking up. Fast forward 3 months after the breakup, I found that Facebook has a section where messages from non-friends are kept. Turns out my then GF was banging her ex and the UPS driver that delivered to her store at the mall. She ended getting with the UPS driver and his 3 kids. Last I checked, they're fucking miserable, and it brings me joy every time I think about it. Edit. In my messages was a note from the UPS driver's then wife. My ex not only cheated, but broke up a marriage. Funnily enough, the girl he was cheating on me with actually told me. She messaged me at 3 in the morning asking if I was still with my ex, and I said yes, he's asleep next to me. Why? She told me what happened, sent me screenshots, and I grabbed his phone. I believed her, but yeah, no, just wanted to see it all for myself. I left the room and looked through it all. He didn't even try to hide it. I went back and threw something at him to wake him up and confronted him. Of course he played dumb. Said he didn't know who I was talking about, blah blah blah. Then I said, oh okay, well maybe this will jog your memory, and pulled his phone out of my pocket. The look on his face was priceless. He knew it was over. I screamed at him, called him every name under the sun, and then he left the house. This was a year ago, and then a few months after that I'm being told that he misses me. Fucking pathetic. Edit. To make it all worse, I uprooted my life completely across the country to be with this guy, and this is how it ended. A friend of mine was suspicious of her husband cheating as he went to play soccer with friends way too often. He always came already showered as he would sweat playing. One day she sewed his soccer socks together, and when he came back all showered she saw the socks were still sewed, so he wasn't playing soccer at all. I was at work and tried to call my boyfriend, but he wasn't answering even after a few hours, and I just got a horrible feeling. It stressed me out so badly for some reason that I started to cry, and my boss let me go home. The whole way home I just kept feeling serious dread. Walked in the house and into my bedroom, and he was laying in bed half clothed with some naked chick. Obviously a huge blow up went down, and after everything settled, this mothurfka tried to tell me that he went to the movies alone and met her there, and she followed him home. Like, even if I believe that this person just followed you home and got naked, you let her do it. So what's the purpose of saying that to me? It was a shitty abusive relationship, and it didn't even end then. I eventually broke up with him, but not on the spot, like I should have. If I could change anything about my life, it would be that I wish I broke up with that guy sooner. That was over 10 years ago though. I had my suspicions, but it was her who ended up telling me. I went into the relationship thinking, wow, I don't deserve this girl, way out of my league. She couldn't help but remind me how much better he was several times, and made sure to rub it in my face. My reaction was a spiral into deep depression. For someone that has very low self-esteem, being cheated on is one of the worst feelings. It feels like it confirms all your worst thoughts about yourself. My now ex-husband demanded constant access to all of my social media and cell phone messages, and was constantly accusing me of cheating, even though he had no reason to think I would do that. I had nothing to hide. Never even thought of cheating. I was watching our young kids 24/7, and didn't even have transportation since he accidentally totaled my car. One day I handed over my phone for him to check for other men and asked to see his. He hesitated but then handed it over. There was a long sexual text history with one of the teenage girls who works for him. He tells me he's in love with her and wants her to move in with us. I was in total shock, dropped his phone cracking it. He retaliated by breaking my laptop. He's a wonderful man, and I miss him every day. Sarcasm.